Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, welcome back to Naseeha sessions. As you guys know, what I do here is that basically I get emails from you guys, where you guys email me in about topics that particularly are areas that where you need advice, but it's the kind of thing that you can't really go and speak to family about. It's the kind of thing that you may not even be able to speak to your best friend about. So you email me anonymously, and I do my best to obviously respond, sometimes through email, sometimes by means of a video like this, and always everything is anonymous. So a brother emailed me in asking for advice. Basically his situation is actually quite it's quite bad. He basically fell into zina. He fell into fornication with his auntie. Okay, so his dad's brother's wife. His dad's brother's wife. He fell into zina with his paternal uncle's wife, his auntie. Yeah. Now, he said he did this 6 years ago, and he feels very regretful for it. But what happened is that his dad promised his uncle, which is his brother, who is the husband of the woman he had zina with, his dad promised his uncle that he would marry him to his cousin, which is his uncle's daughter. Okay? So basically, he was betrothed to his cousin, who is the daughter of the woman that he did zina with. And he said, now basically I'm married. I'm married to my cousin, and I had basically had illegitimate, illegal sexual relationships with my wife's mum. And his basically concern is my marriage acceptable? My marriage to my wife, who is basically his cousin, the daughter of the auntie, is that marriage legitimate? Is it permissible? Is it a halal marriage, basically? So I'm going to answer this question with regards to if the marriage is halal or not at the end. But the reason I'm going to mention it at the end, brothers and sisters, is because cases like this, believe it or not, as horrific as they may sound, are extremely common. As a matter of fact, probably have many of us watching, due to our innocence and naivety, may not even realize, but these things are happening inside of our own families. You may not know, but I know because I get the emails. So I want to mention some points, brothers and sisters, to show you how to avoid things like this happening within the family ever again, and what the root cause of it is, and so on and so forth. Because it may not be that you do zina with your auntie, but you've got cousins doing zina with each other, you've got brother-in-laws doing zina with sister-in-laws, a man sleeping with his husband's wife, a sister sleeping with her wife's husband, situations like that. So let us look at this problem from its root. What is the root cause? Brothers and sisters, the root cause as to why such things happen is because we don't know the boundaries within family. What do I mean by this? Some family members are mahram for you. A mahram is someone who is basically haram for you to marry. Like your brother, sisters, your brother is your mahram because it's haram for you to ever marry him. Because he's your mahram, you can sit with him, you can hug your brother, you can be with him without your hijab. Your father, you can never marry him. Your son, you can never marry. You have some family members who are haram for you to ever marry. Because they're haram for you to marry, they are your mahram, which means you can be with them normally, inshallah. But then you've got other family members, you've got cousins who are not mahram for you because you are able to marry them. The Sharia actually has facilitated that you could potentially marry this cousin of yours. Now that cousin for you, because you can marry him, he's not your mahram, it is haram for you to hug him, it is haram for you to shake his hand, it's haram for you to sit alone with him, brothers and sisters. You cannot sit alone with him. You cannot talk to him the way you would talk to your brother or your sister. And the reality is that in families, we take this matter very lightly. We take it very lightly. But it's a matter that the Prophet ﷺ placed huge emphasis on. Matter of fact, let's take the relationship between the brother-in-law and the sister-in-law. And this is a common relationship. Brothers, men, get very close to their sister-in-laws and vice versa. The Prophet ﷺ said the brother-in-law to the sister-in-law is like death. Are you hearing me? The brother-in-law to the sister-in-law is like death. Death. That's how dangerous your relationship is for you to get close. It's like death. Why? Why is the Prophet ﷺ mentioning it with such emphasis? You know why, brothers and sisters? Because of the closeness of the relationship. Because of how close to home. Like some people have their sister-in-law living in the same house. Or maybe not in the same house, but you regularly are going to the house of your brother and his wife is there, or vice versa. Because of how close to home this threat is. Because that's a threat. Because you may fall into haram. Because of how close to home that threat of falling into zina, or that risk of falling into zina is, the Prophet ﷺ placed higher emphasis on it so we could be precautioned and warned. Why? Because of how close they are to home, our guard is most likely dropped. Like, bro, that's my brother's wife. Obviously, I'm not going to do nothing with my brother's wife. You drop your guard. That's my cousin. Nah, bro, I'm not going to do that with my cousin. Come on, that's my auntie. I'm not going to do it with my auntie. Because they're so close to home, your guard is dropped. Your guard is dropped. And that's why you're most likely to fall into risk with it. Because you're like, nah, it's never going to happen. You take it easy, hug your cousin, hug your sister-in-law, hug your brother-in-law, sit down, spend time alone. And before you know it, things, brothers and sisters, they go very, very haywire. So the Prophet ﷺ told us stay away. Stay away from your cousins, my sisters and my brothers that are from the opposite gender, that are not mahram to you, or you're not mahram to them. Stay away from, same way, your aunties or your uncles if you're not mahram to them. And I'm going to share with you, don't worry, I'm going to tell you guys later exactly who's mahram for you and who's not. I'm going to give you a list. Don't worry, I'm going to give you that inshallah. And before I do, I really want to make sure I've driven this point home, brothers and sisters. I want to tell you a story, a very, very, very sad story about someone who this occurred to. There was a brother who basically, he got married, okay? When he got married, his father was insisting that he has to live in the same house with the rest of the family. And the brother said, Dad, I would love to, but my brother lives in the house and I'm going to bring a wife into the same house where my brother is. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the brother-in-law to the sister-in-law is like death. They're like death to each other. Like, it's dangerous relationship. And the dad started switching. He said, what? Are you accusing your brother of? You think your brother's going to sleep with your wife? We're family. What are you talking about? You're taking it to extreme. You're becoming an extremist, etc., etc., etc. Now, when this happened, brothers, the brother who was getting married gave in. He said, okay, Dad, I'll make you happy. I'll bring my wife home. So he lived with his wife in the same house as his brother and his dad. Now, years went on. That brother, he had kids, he had children. His brother even got married, brought his wife home. He had kids with her. He had children with her. And they went on for years. Now, one day, this brother, as he's in his car, he's going to work or something like that, he notices that there's a woman on the side of the street. And she's pregnant. She's about to give birth. She's pregnant and she's about to give birth. And she's standing there with another lady who actually happens to be her mum. So he pulls the car to the side. He says, do you need any help? Can I take you to the hospital? And the woman was like, please, I'm about to give birth. I'm about to give birth. Please take me to the hospital. I would appreciate it so much. So the brother is the brother who got married first. He's in his car. He's got a pregnant woman in the back with her mum and takes her to the hospital. Now, when he takes her to the hospital, the baby gives birth pretty much straight away. The woman gives birth, to the baby straight away pretty much. When she gives birth to the baby, the doctors, they ask, they say, who's the father of the child? And guess what the woman says? She says, this man who dropped me just now, that's the father. The brother looks at the doctor and he looks at the woman like, listen, before you respect, I ain't no father of this baby. I'm married. I got kids at home. I don't know this woman. I just picked her up off the side of the street because she said she needed to get to the hospital. She's about to give birth. That's all I know. Now, this is in a Muslim country, okay? So they take this stuff very seriously. Like, if the woman's saying, you're my dad, they're not just going to let him walk out like that. They said, okay, listen, bruv, come. We're going to do a blood test. We're going to check right now if you are the father of this child or not. So they did a blood test. When they did a blood test, the doctor, he calls this man into his office. He says to him, I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. He said, the good news is that you were not lying. You are not the father of that child. You and that baby who just gave birth has nothing to do with each other. The bad news though, is that we checked your blood test and you're not able to actually ever have kids. You, forget if this child is your child, you can't have any children whatsoever. So of course it's not going to be your child. Now the man, I told you he's got kids at home. He's shocked. He's like, what do you mean? Of course I can have kids. I've got children at home. My wife gave birth to my kids. I've got kids at home. The doctor looks at him and says, impossible. Impossible. Your body, it doesn't have the necessary things that you need to have kids. But the man said, no, wallahi, I've got kids at home. I'm telling you, I've got kids. I've got children. So the doctor says, okay, bring your kids. Bring your kids. And he does a blood test on the children. He does a blood test on the children and he finds out that they're not his children. And later on, he actually found out that they weren't his kids. Their blood actually matched with the blood of his brother. They were his brother's children. His brother, in his very own house, was sleeping with his wife. And all of the kids that he thought were his were actually his brother's kids. Brothers and sisters, this is a true story. Wallahi, you do not understand how common this is. Wallahi, you do not understand how common this is. You don't understand. It will happen in your house and you'll never know about it. You'll never know about it. If the Prophet ﷺ said that the brother-in-law to the sister-in-law like death, they know that there is a reason why he said it. So if you're bringing your sister-in-law close to your brother or vice versa, you're bringing your husband close to you or something, and they're spending private time together, they're hugging each other, they're speaking flirtatious to each other, and they're doing any of these things, then know that something is most likely happening, because the Prophet ﷺ would not have said it's death. Sorry, I shouldn't say something's most likely happening, but because that's not true. But there's a huge chance something can be happening. So it's best that you keep those boundaries, brothers and sisters. The Messenger ﷺ, Allah said, وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. He doesn't speak from his own desires. إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. Rather, what he tells you is from Allah. It's revelation. Allah is communicating this to you. Allah created you. He created these relationships and He knows what works and what doesn't work, my beloved brothers and sisters. So now that we know the danger of these relationships, what is the solution to the problem that you have at hand? Brothers and sisters, the solution is very problem. You treat your sister-in-law that is haram for you. You treat your cousin who is haram for you. Your auntie who is haram for you. You treat these people in your family. You treat them the same way you would treat a stranger on the streets. Let me give you an example. You have a sister-in-law, okay? Your sister-in-law, how would you treat another woman on the street? You lower your gaze. You don't touch her. The Prophet ﷺ said, to touch the hand of a woman who's haram for me, it's more beloved for me to stick an iron needle through my head. The Prophet said this, it's more beloved for me to stick an iron needle through my head than to touch the hand of a woman who's haram for me. So don't no more shaking hands with your sister-in-law or your cousins or hugging them or your aunties that are haram for you. There's no more of that. You can't do any of that anymore. You can't. The Prophet said, sisters, your cousins and your brother-in-laws, don't beautify your speech to them. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, do not beautify your speech. Don't speak in a nice, hey, hi. Don't speak in that way with these men. Maybe you don't have an ill intention, but Allah said perhaps he has a perversion in his heart. So you speak to him very direct. Assalamu alaikum. You say what you need to do within the correct circumstances, family gatherings, family environment. You do it, but you don't meet up alone. You don't sit together. Why don't you sit together with your brother-in-law or your sister-in-law? Because the Prophet said, no two people who are haram for each other sit together. alone, except the shaitan is a third one in between them. He's trying to make you guys do haram. So, matter of fact, I take it back. I said you have to treat your these family members, your sister-in-laws, your cousins, your aunties, uncles who are haram for you. I said you have to treat them like you treat an outsider, right? Matter of fact, you treat them with even more precaution than an outsider. Because you're more likely to end up doing haram with someone who's closer to home, a sister or a cousin who's coming to your house every day, or you're going to a house and you're free and your boundaries are all mixed up. You're more likely to do zina with her or with him than you are with a random woman on the street. Because they're not so close to home. The guard is not so dropped. Does that make sense? So you don't look at them, you look down. Remember, if the first look, if it's accidental, no problem. Just look away. But the second look is from shaitan. You know, brothers, you have to treat them the same way, rather with more caution than you would treat someone who's outside in the streets. That's the solution. You want a solution? That's the solution, my beloved brothers and sisters. Now quickly, and at the end I'm going to give the answer to the brother's initial question. Now quickly, let's run through the mahram chart. Okay, you can see this chart that's on the screen right now. Take a screenshot of it if you want, if you need, if it helps you, take a screenshot of it. Don't take a screenshot of my face though, please, okay? Okay, so brothers, I'm talking to you first. This chart that you can see, this is for the men. In other words, brothers, these are all of the women that you're mahram for and the women that you're not mahram for. As you can see, everyone in blue is a man, so of course you can hang around with the men in your family. You know, homosexuality is a discussion that's beyond the scope of this video, but of course, you know, it's not something that's permissible in Islam. So, provided you don't have homosexual tendencies, no problem, you can be with your cousin, you could be with your uncle, you know, you could be with your auntie's husband, because there's no fitna for haram happening, okay? So everyone in blue is a man, no problem. Everyone in green that you see, you are mahram for these women. For example, your mom, your sister, so on and so forth. And they are specifically, the ones in green, are mahram through lineage. In other words, through blood. You're their mahram through blood. All of the women that you can see that are in yellow, you're also their mahram. But you're mahram for them through marriage. For example, your mother-in-law. No problem. Your mother-in-law, you're her mahram. You know, you can never get married to her. So that's why she's your mahram. You can hug your mother-in-law. You could spend time with her alone, talk to her, have a nice, chat. No problem. Because they are mahram through marriage. Now let us go to the women that you're not mahram for. Now, brothers and sisters, notice on the list, all of the ones with the crosses through them, the red crosses. These are all the women to whom you are not mahram. In other words, these women, they're haram for you, my brother. You cannot spend time with them privately. You can't flirt with them. You can't touch them. You have to lower your gaze. You have to lower your gaze and so on and so forth. Notice as a rule of thumb, all of your female cousins are haram for you. You cannot spend time with them like that. You cannot touch them, you cannot hug them, you can't flirt with them, you can't, so on and so forth. You can't go out with them, you can't hang out with them. You can't do it in inappropriate circumstances. You cannot whatsoever. All of your female cousins. Okay, that's a rule of thumb. But let us just go through the others just very quickly. Notice that from your dad's side of the family, from your paternal side of the family, your dad's brother, your uncle. In Urdu, we would call him Chacha or Taya or whatever, yeah? Your dad's uncle's wife is haram for you. So your Chachi or your Tai, they're haram for you. This brother who sent us the email, this is the person in the family who he fell into zina with, okay? He fell into zina with his dad's brother's wife, his auntie, okay? Now, the one that he ended up marrying was his dad's brother's daughter. His dad's brother's daughter, as you can see right there. He married her, but he fell into zina with his wife, okay? So now let's go to your mum's side of the family. From your mum's side of the family, your mum's brother's wife is also haram for you. Your mum's brother's wife, she's also haram for you. Just like your dad's brother's wife is haram for you, okay? And of course, all your cousins are. Now, your sister-in-law is again going to be haram for you. All your sisters-in-law are automatically haram for you. So that would mean your brother's wife, and that would mean your wife's sisters. Your brother's wife is your sister-in-law, she's haram for you. And your wife's sisters, they are also your sisters-in-law, but from your wife's side, and they're also haram for you. So that's for the brothers, okay? I hope that's made the matter clear for you, inshallah ta'ala. Let us now just quickly look at the mahram chart for the sisters. Again, sisters, as you can see, everyone that's in peachy pink, they're women. So provided, again, you don't have any lesbian tendencies, no problem. These are your family members who you can hang around with, because there's no risk of fitna. Okay, you can hang around with your cousins and your aunties and your nieces, no problem. Okay, if you look at all the men that are in green, these are again men who are your mahram. They are your mahram, but they are your mahram from where? From lineage, from blood, because of blood relation, like your dad, your granddad. All the men that are in yellow, they are also your mahram, but they are your mahram through marriage. For example, your father-in-law, your son-in-law, your daughter's husband, he would be your mahram. No problem, inshallah ta'ala. Okay? No problem. Now, sisters, let us just quickly look at those men who are absolutely positively haram for you. There's no two ways about it. They're from your family. Again, the same way all of the females for the men that are cousins, all the female cousins for the men are haram, the same way all the male cousins for the women are haram. All of your cousins. All of your cousins. Now, your uncle, who happens to be your dad's sister's husband, he's haram for you. The same way, your uncle, who happens to be your mum's sister's husband, is also haram for you. Okay? And of course, your brother-in-law is haram for you, i.e. your sister's husband, or your husband's sisters. Or your husband's brothers. Your husband's brothers. Your brother-in-law, whether it's your sister's husband or your husband's brothers, they're haram for you also. So that's your mahram chart. I just wanted to go through it so you guys can understand it a little bit better for yourselves. Write it down, take a screenshot of it, but don't take a screenshot of my face like I said, please. Now to finally answer the question for the brother who asked, is his marriage permissible? Is his marriage, is it legit? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. That your cousin, the reason why you are not her mahram is because mahram is someone who is haram for you to marry. You can marry her. The fact that you did zina with your auntie, it doesn't affect this marriage. But it does require tawbah. It does require tawbah. I mean, the sin that your auntie did is so great. Remember, zina is of two types. There is a zina of a person who is not married, and there is a zina of a person who is married. And the punishment in the Sharia for the person who is married in the zina is extremely, subhanallah. So it requires repentance from the both of you. Now she's your mother-in-law. So of course now because she's your mother-in-law, you have become her mahram. So now, it's a complicated situation, to be honest. Okay, so as you can see, me personally, I'm a bit confused and lost myself at this point because it's a bit of a peak situation, but I hope what I've said kind of summarizes. So just one final point that I forgot to mention earlier is that, of course, you don't want to be rude. Like, your auntie, like now you got aunties. It doesn't matter if they're old. You still can't, hug them or kiss them. And I know they're going to want to kiss you. That's what aunties are like, right? So you can't be rude. But at the same time, you can't be lenient with it. You have to be, no, sorry, auntie, I can't do this. Just explain it to them softly. I know it's peak. I know your family's not going to understand. I know they're going to think you're extreme. You could try to show them the video. Maybe they'll watch it with you. Maybe it'll be a bit too much for them. The point is that you have to firm it. Don't be rude. Some people are just rude, like, no, auntie. No, it's auntie. I mean, respect her. But, yeah, just be careful on it. Also, another point that I just want to emphasize on a bit more is for those who have fallen into the sin. For example, the brother who mentioned that, he did this. Like I said, your marriage is fine, bro. But your situation is that you need to make tawbah to Allah. You need to make sure you repent. And you mentioned in the email that you feel guilty. You feel remorse. And that's great because the Prophet ﷺ said that basically repentance, tawbah really is remorse, guilt. To hate the fact that you did it, to not want to go back to it again. And that goes for all of you brothers and sisters who are watching, who fell into this sin or other sins, like zina of other types, or any sin for that matter, is make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do it sincerely. And you'll find Allah to be a merciful Lord, welcoming you with acceptance of your repentance, inshaAllah ta'ala. But I just want to mention as a final point, I know I've said that a few times, but it's been a difficult video for me to do. But the absolute final point that I want to make, brothers and sisters, is that don't ever tell, if you have fallen into this sin, like the brother has, don't go and tell your family members now. Like for example, say you do zina with your sister-in-law, don't go tell your wife now. Or don't just dead it. Take precautions of how for it to never happen again and keep it moving. The reason for that is because you're going to expose your sin. Like shaitan wants you to expose your sin. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He kept your sin hidden. And now you're going to make it public by talking about it? And the Prophet said everyone's sins are going to be forgiven except for those who do a sin and then they expose it. So don't expose your sin. You're going to stop it from being forgiven, you know? Or possibly being forgiven. So I leave you there, inshallah. If you have any more issues for which you need to send in emails, I'll do my best to respond and work on it. nasihasession@gmail.com. Please email us at that, inshallah ta'ala. And make dua for myself and the rest of the team. This is a communal team effort. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.